Hello and welcome back to hafnar.blabla, the podcast telling you all about all of the wonderful people who work in Hafnarhaus, downtown, in the middle of wonderful Reykjavik. The sun is shining, it's snowy, there's a volcano, all kinds of things are going on, and I am so lucky to be joined today by the wonderful Antje Taiga, who's our incredible cook, chef, goddess, mother figure, all round wonderful house person. Welcome to the show, Antje.
No, thank you, Josie.
Oh, it's so nice to have you. Full disclosure, Antje and I do a lot of work together.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope this is going to be a cozy fireside chat with old pals.
Yeah.
I want to start by giving you a present.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
It's a sticker.
Okay.
You might recognize it.
It's amazing.
Do you want to describe to people
I
what
can,
this is? Yeah. And the energy of the podcast that they're about to witness.
And it's also in blue.
Yes.
Which we color coordinated today.
Mm-hmm.
Inspired by the sky. 2024.
Yeah, right year. Come on. You can do this.
2024. I'm gonna be unstable, unstoppable.
Yeah. So this is a meme that I sent Antje at the beginning of this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a
quote from a text message, presumably between a couple of friends, where one is saying, 2024, I'm going to be unstable, and then corrects themselves to being unstoppable, which is, I think, kind of a good theme for us and the work that we do, because I feel like there are so many kind of natural analogies for the things that we work on and the things that we create, but one of them is like moths looking for the light, where we're kind of circling around a lot and we're bumping into things and we're hitting off ideas and we're bumping into each other, and we might look like we're totally chaotic and in spin, but we're always drawing closer to the source of inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Or I would also say it's just the way things flow.
Yes.
Because it's never like just one path.
No.
Going straight.
Unstoppable, unstable.
Yeah. I like that.
For those of you who are not lucky enough to know Antje so well, we're going to go right back to the source.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
No.
Right back.
Yeah.
I think childhood's very important.
Mm-hmm.
It's a source of a lot of direction for a lot of us. Not always, but I think it's always important for putting someone in context. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to know what that context was for you. So you grew up in Germany.
Yeah, I grew up in Berlin, and I grew up in the east part of Berlin before the wall came down. And it's funny because it definitely comes back to me a lot, especially since I moved to Iceland, because there's similarities to how society worked and works here. That makes me feel at home in many ways, but also there's some of the same challenges.
Okay, give me some examples of what you're referring to.
There's small things that just make me laugh a lot. No, but it's like I just thought about it this morning, actually, like that. When I grew up, we weren't allowed to leave.
Yeah.
Or only if you were in the position to have a job that would allow you to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But that came also with a price. And like my parents were scientists, and my dad was allowed to leave, but they always had us, so he couldn't just make a run for it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like, knowledge was freedom, and what it allowed you to achieve things that weren't, now it's money allows you to do things.
Right.
And for me, money is still like just a vehicle. It's not necessarily what I aim for, but it's more the knowledge of things and understanding where you're at and what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also my entire upbringing still is very, affects me till today. It's about adjusting and figuring out things,
Mm-hmm.
and not being necessarily stuck with one thing, but grab things from what's around you and make things better.
Yeah.
And I also think that still when I was young, and I think it's still my main question is what's my purpose here? Why was I put here? Or why did I put myself here? Or why was I given this life? And how can I make this life better is one of the purposes. I moved a lot because after the wall came down, that was the main goal: just get out of here and just explore and see everything. And it's still present, but of course I also have children, so you have to eventually decide where you want to be
For a few years at
least. And then I think I'm a visitor to places. I'm not necessarily the center of things, but I try to,
interesting.
I like to arrive in some situations and groups and countries and cities and communities, and then I just try to analyze what's missing and what I can give to it in a way.
It feels to me like, you said your parents were scientists, and it feels to me like you kind of have these different forces working in you. Yeah. Because there is this analytical part of what you do. Yeah. And in cooking and baking and all of these things, it's very,
it's chemistry and biology.
Exactly. You have to take into into account these undeniable forces. But alongside this, you have, clearly an incredible artistic presence and integrity and identity. And also this, when you're talking about these communities, I think it's interesting when you say that you feel like a visitor. I can see that, I understand that, but I think it's also surprising because you're so integral to a lot of these communities and spaces. And I think that comes from this other factor where you obviously have this maternal instinct and aspect, and I'm hesitant to use it because I think women get labeled with this a bit too much. This idea of being maternal, but at the same time, it's what I think is different is this kind of sometimes it's not necessarily, I'm going to call it like a feminine energy, but it's not necessarily attached to being a woman. No. But it's a way of making art that is collaborative and expansive, and it's a way of seeing art as being beyond the confines of what you do yourself, and more about contributing to an artistic vision or lifestyle or community. In terms of your own upbringing, was that something that you felt from a young age? Did you have a desire to be creative and artistic, and how did you express that as a kid?
Well, when I was a kid, I was very introvert and mainly in books, but I also have a younger brother that I took care of most of the time. And that I grew up with a sense of responsibility for others from very early, and I really like that. I like the caring aspect, and I do think it's not just a female. I know also a lot of men who are very caring and who are thinking in terms of community and giving to others. as but I don't know, I just lost it right there.
You were talking about being involved in raising your brother and being a caring a carer basically from a young age, but I mean,
but it took me a while to figure out that I'm actually that I really enjoy being around people, which was not so clear to me for a long time, but I get a lot from the interaction, and I'm a bit torn, so I need my refuge and peace and quiet and not talking in order to do that work and that enjoyment and so on. So I try to follow what brings the joy to me, which is something that might not bring joy to others, but it does to me. So it can be very different things that might not look like they work together, but they make sense for me and for how I live. And then I also have a grown-up daughter already that I got when I was 18 that I'm really thankful for. And she's not here and I miss her a lot. But also she's 24 already, so she has her own life, and we had our time, and we will have other times as grown-up women.
There are these different seasons in life. Yeah. But I mean, it must have been quite a formative experience for you to become a parent at such a young age.
Yeah, definitely. But I also felt ready to do that, else I wouldn't have done it. And it gave me that sense of home.
Yeah.
And just by creating it. It's like I didn't depend on outer concepts of what home is, but I had it with me all the time, and I wasn't alone in it anymore. In that quest, it was me and her, and we just had a good time in many places. And then now I have two more children. They're boys and half Icelandic. And during COVID, we just decided to come here because it was difficult. Like in many places, it was easier here to come to Iceland as artists and having children and being system irrelevant at the time, which meant no daycare, no, help, and so on. It's like it just didn't feel like the right place to be anymore.
Yeah.
And even though that's like, I'm also a real Berliner, so I'm like, I really miss Berlin often, you know, or just this, when you're there, it's easy to go somewhere else as well.
Yes.
Which sometimes I get this, we call that the island, when you like,
almost, it's the grander version of cabin fever, basically.
Yeah, it's a grander version of cabin fever. Yeah. Like your Inselkoller. It's like you're like close to collapsing or something.
Germany to have like the perfect word. Yeah, absolutely.
And I also love my language, so it's
that's
also
a
something
whole other thing as being an immigrant, isn't it?
Yeah.
All of the ways that you're stripped of that.
Yeah, it's just you just form a different identity in a different language, and I would do this interview very differently in German.
Yes,
and I'm like really aware of like how I do not speak English like a native English speaker. Also because I never lived in America or in England, it's like I only been exposed to it by foreigners speaking it. And
but that's really interesting in and of itself, because I would say that, I don't speak English here like I speak English in Scotland. And of course there's a lot of flavour and character that comes from like local dialects and accents and all of these things. I mean, I get really a lot of questions like, people saying, oh, but you don't sound Scottish because I can understand you. And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point. Like, first of all,
you want to be understood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're here to communicate, and I find that there's this almost like collective version of English.
Mm-hmm.
I speak often, when I'm speaking English, I feel like I'm speaking it with like Icelandic inflection and emphasis.
Yeah,
because you're kind of fitting tonally into a space, and so. Especially in somewhere like Hafnarhaus, I would be so if any linguists want to come and do a study, I think it would be so interesting to come and see how after a few years of us all living and working together, and English is predominantly spoken here. There's a bunch of Icelanders, a bunch of Germans, a bunch of whoever, but English is kind of the common language of work
what
here.
we agreed on, yes. Yeah.
And so I would really be interested to see how that language shifts and changes. Over the time. Yeah, we'll find out. Maybe in 10 years' time, no one will be able to understand us from the outside at all, and this podcast will be entirely an internal communication.
We would need like a secluded valley somewhere to do so, like in the Alps, where you form like these really difficult to understand dialects, and like next village cannot understand what you're saying.
I think we can engineer that and happen.
Yeah, but it is about assimilation,
yes.
and I think that's also an aim. I came here and I tried to assimilate, of course. Like I tried to understand in order to have a enjoyable life here.
Yes.
Which is, I think, most of our aims is like to have an enjoyable life, or it should be, and that's also how I ended up here, basically, because it is very enjoyable for me to be here. And also with my still very little Icelandic, even though I understand quite a lot, it's not something that I can just pick up, and it puzzles me because I've been really good with languages before. But because it's not such a talking culture in a way of like you just meet on the market, like in other countries, and then you just have a chat. Yeah, it's not. You have to make much more of an effort here. But on the other hand, it's other things are much easier here than in other places, and it's a very safe space to explore yourself as a foreigner trying to fit in, or find your thing. Yeah, which I try to do. I try to find my thing here, and that, like everything in my life, it's just by following the flow and or letting life do its thing and trusting in it, and even though it's sometimes very painful and or frustrating or but then also to figure, but that should not be in my way, but what's my take on it to make it better and make it work for myself. And I think that's also how I work here in Hafnarhaus. I came as a photographer, but also I worked as a chef in the Nordic house, and that's also where I met a few people already. And I did cook that's how I met René, and why I ended up here, which is very fortunate. So René came and ate my food at my Monday vegan lunches at Indie Music Publishing, which I just did to meet my, the people I knew already from Berlin, and just to have like some sort of a social moment in the week while the restaurant was closed. Yeah. And that's how I met René. And then we both cooked for artist residency and just decided it's fitting, it works. And then I came to Hafnarhaus and had a tour around the house, and I wasn't really sure because it had a very different vibe back then.
A lot of people talk about this. I mean, there's been
a bit haunted.
There's been a lot of changes in this space, and I mean the biggest one is just the atmosphere, and it's like you'd think that's kind of obvious, like it was an empty building before and now there's lots of people in it, but even at the beginning when people were moving in, it just took a while for that kind of the joy and creativity and social aspect to permeate through the bones of the house, and now it feels, I don't know, if it's haunted, then it's happy ghosts, other than the elevators, which I'm terrified
Well, they're
of.
the first in Iceland.
Yeah, so we believe.
They're like old. Well, they have 0001 and 2.
Yeah.
So I think they're just old ladies, They just have a...
They're terrifying old ladies. I'm having nothing to do with them.
Well, there's terrifying old ladies in this world, or men. I don't know what they actually are, Some grandpa who doesn't want to get up anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
The trap children. No, I'm not a fan.
No.
But the cooking thing, like you said, you have this background in, well, your background originally was in modeling and then in photography.
Yeah, actually photography first, because I had an amazing art teacher in school who got me into all these art programs because she thought I was undernourished in the school. And she sent me to these like houses where you could just explore what kind of art you wanted to be in, and you were cooked for, and just had an amazing time to make contacts, and then that's where I learned developing film and exploring photography, and always thought that was great to have a camera with me and just like a diary or something, capture things. And then I later, then I started modeling, where you meet a lot of photographers and you learn from them. And I assisted photographers a lot and did internships in film production companies. I worked in a film production company for a while. You just meet so many people on the way. Yeah. And I was 15 when I started to model. So I've been in that business for a very long time. And I moved around a lot because of it. And I had a life enabled because of that work that I'm really grateful for. And I was very fortunate to have that, also raising a daughter and just trying things out on the side.
So romantic and adventurous.
But it was, and it still is. I'm just like I still try to, just because I'm a very curious person in terms of knowledge. I'm a sucker for knowledge. So that's fun for me, and I'm interested in all kinds of art. That's why I'm in all the forms of art and science, and and that's why I really love this house too. And because it brings that all together,
under one roof.
Yeah, and we're basically a municipality. Yes. I think in numbers we equal some town in Iceland.
It's a really good way to think about that. I haven't thought about that before, and I think I think a lot more things in Hafnarhaus make sense, actually, if you think about it as like as a municipality.
Yeah.
And all of the maintenance and structure that has to go around it.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the most integral things about Hafnarhaus is our lunchtime meals. And for you, I mean, I feel like when I eat your food, it's nourishment, it's art, it's creativity. It's also, I feel like I pick up as well, like there is this challenge that comes for if you feel like you're a foodie and you move to Iceland and you love to cook and you love fresh ingredients and you love access to lots of different products, and then you come here and you're like, okay. Yeah. And it's a challenge.
It is. But then again, like, what do you do about it?
Well, exactly.
Do you complain or do you do something about it? And and of course, like I lived in Italy, I studied acting there. And that's actually where this idea of lunches come from, and something I really enjoyed and I want to recreate in every place I am. It's just like you get together, you eat together. It's like there's no question about it. Like that you eat together and you enjoy that time, and everyone makes space for that during the day, because everyone gets hungry eventually. And then you talk. And in Italy they talk a lot over food, about food.
With
about
wine. With wine.
Oh yeah, that too, and sunshine, but and outside. No, but it's like what I experienced there, how much I form friendships there because of the food.
Yeah.
Because of sitting together and not being in this like networking. Because also as an actress, you go to these like movie meets media and like all these like events where you're supposed to make the connections, and everyone is just in this like really exhausting role of something, like trying to sell themselves, trying to be interesting, trying to be this, trying to be that, which you aren't when you eat. Like, you know, you relax while you eat, and you start, you know, have a different, you sit with different people, you get to know them better, because you also don't have all these social filters on that you, if you would go on a date, or if you would go into those like job interview situations that are very stressful, and often nothing comes about it. You know, you go there and, you know, I don't know, I went to a lot of these events, and but all my really deep connections with directors, you know, everyone I worked with, makeup artists, they came from gatherings that were informal. Yeah. And I also see that in the house, also when I worked in a film production company and cooked for them in Berlin. And I really, really love them. They're called Big Fish Film Production. And this is where I started cooking, like on a regular basis, and doing this experiment. Like, what changes if people eat together? Before they would go to restaurants, and then different floors, different incomes, and you know, so you would just group with the producers would group, and the technical department would group, and the, you know, like the bookkeepers would group, and the editors would, you know, and else they would just phone each other up, and, you know, urgent, and then they started eating together, and they made a really beautiful presentation in the end when I left, like how much it changed their work experience and their, how you know, everything, and I'm really like happy that they did that, because
what were those changes? What were they finding?
Less sick days. Wow. Knowing, you know, enjoying more to come to work, winning more awards, which they thought was like something directly coming from eating together. So I don't know. So I try to do that here, and I see it happening. I mean, I see it also, what happened with me and my ideas and projects. I found the people for it, and I I mean, I cook, but I also
you also eat.
I also eat.
You're also here. I mean, that's a. Yeah. I think it's.
And it's also funny because, like, when it's not it's not funny, but it is. No, because I have a son with autism, and I went very deep into, you know, looking into what nutrition and, you know, how you can help the brain to function well. And since we're not working on fields anymore, and how you can fight inflammation, which is a major cause of like a lot of stress, and how you not work well, and how your, you know, your whole system works better, and there's a huge chunk is nutrition and the way you eat, and you can apply that to not only autism, but I mean, we use our brain more than we use our body, unfortunately.
Some of us,
but that's just what it is, you know. And especially Iceland, where you have to drive everywhere, and it's really, you know, miserable if you don't. And like,
this is, except for today, this is not typical. Do not do not judge us.
So you need brain food, and something that fuels you, you know, longer than just fast sugars, and then of course we all should eat more vegetables. That's, you know, no rocket science, and that's what I like to provide to this community as my, you know,
artistic contribution.
Yeah.
It is very
And it's also
artistic,
something I
yeah.
can show up. It's also very good for myself to show up for that every day and have this sense of, okay, I accomplished something during child-friendly hours, and
Yeah.
not having to work hours that are not great
Mm-hmm.
for my life,
Yeah.
which most of how the system is built is often not so great.
Yeah. It's not.
You
It's
know.
not built.
Or I would
easily
have
for
to be an
parents.
Icelander to get into those jobs that are actually great
Mm-hmm.
for
Well, it's. I mean, it's a joy. It's one of the main components of hafnarhaus to have you.
Yeah.
I knew that this would happen, that I would let time run away with us. But we have our little game to play.
Okay, let's.
Okay. So this is where, if you
Yeah.
haven't watched this before, Antje's going to pick a card. You're going to hand it to me, and I'm going to read it to you. And I have no idea what these questions are. We have not seen them before. So
Leni said it's some sort of psychological.
yeah, I
question.
think it's going to mess you up.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is a really good one. Something about my culture I wish other people would understand.
Something about my Germanness.
I can't get the lid back on, Lenny. Sorry. It could be about your Germanness. I mean, it could be about your specific family culture, or whatever kind of springs to mind. I know I certainly feel like there's a lot of things, a lot of words, mostly words. I keep having to explain what crack means. CRAIC. We had this in the pub the other night when we were in Tiersopper, and I was like, we should go to Tolftoner because the crack's really good there. And you were like, we're gonna think there's crack. Crack means fun, okay? It means what's going on.
Cracking up.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
But is there anything for you in a kind of daily life that you feel?
No, I can't think of some.
Can't
I mean,
pin
there's
it down.
probably so
well, maybe
many
this
things.
leads us on. The thing I want to end with us talking about is a project that we've been working on together. That's, you are the force of nature behind, and then there's
I just hijacked you into
it, and I love it. But it's myself and Thorstein and Owen and
Christian Ross.
Have been like kind of holding on to your
Yeah,
coattails.
I've been just looking, and then everything's always there somehow.
Well, that's the joy of the house,
it's
right?
so beautiful. You just really have to formulate what you just have to say it out loud, kind of, and then it gets its own life. That's how I feel sometimes. It happens, and I just really enjoy hanging out with you guys, but you're also amazing at what you're doing, and I always had this dream about this, or it's just a concept of a mountain garden, and we did that in Nilissasap in December, and I always wanted to bring this idea of food happenings or sensory like an experiment for myself, but also how I want to enjoy things, and I want to share that in a way. So we created this mountain garden, which is a concept of mine, or a dream. I mean, I look at Asia every day and it's changing, but it's also like it really helps me to be here.
It's like constantly changing and also completely stable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's here in Iceland, mountains are the providers. They're basically the mothers, they create new earth, they protect areas so the wind is not just blowing over, and they, I'm always on the quest of like, who grows what here, so I don't have to use imported stuff, and how can I make things out of that, and also evolve in terms of what's my cooking here. I cannot go to the Turkish market in Berlin and just, come home with like boxes full of fresh produce. But there is ways to get produce here and cook with it greatly and make beautiful dinners. And bringing that with me. So it's like, what's my identity here? So that's how the mountain garden, which we created, it's like a sensory event with like sound and lights and singing and dancing and
and I mean, when you were explaining this concept to me, I was so on board for so many reasons. But one of the things, like the images that really stuck with me was this idea of immigrants traveling to places with seeds sewn inside their clothes, so that wherever they reached, they could plant things from home, make a garden, survive.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wonder, in terms of, maybe that's something that culturally you want to explore and share with people when you're doing this event, because you also come from a background where things were not always easily accessible, and people really had to make do and mend and figure out and be very creative with what they had. And how does that come into play with this idea?
It's the source of it, basically, and it's also what I think will be the future here, because we will not have everything all the time, and it will have an end eventually. And then how equipped are you for that change? And how well is Iceland equipped for that change when all of a sudden imports are more expensive and, people cannot live like that anymore on that level. And then you have to become creative. And then you will need the creatives when you hit hard and when it's painful. And then all of a sudden people who are able to adapt and create things from little will save it then.
Like you said, we had this wonderful event in December, but what are your
I would like
hopes?
To travel with it.
What's the future of the mountain garden?
It will grow into very different things, but one will be more I want more of that. And it can look very different, because a garden also looks very different through the seasons or where it is. I also want to say we do a Chinese New Year's dumpling event tomorrow. Me and Viv, who I met actually on my first René and me collaboration in Eirabakke in the artist residency. So we will.
She's an artist in residence.
She's an artist in residence. I'm really happy about this new residency, thanks to Uta and René. Big shout out to Uta. She's just incredible, and also thanks to her, I got a grant from Rannish to develop a product.
So that's another watch this space moment.
And so tomorrow, Chinese New Year's, Year of the Dragon. I think it's the wood dragon, if I remember.
Wood dragon, right? Exciting.
And we're gonna do dumplings. And please sign up.
Please sign up. Please join us
if you want to join.
Do we have any questions from the floor, from the Facebook stream? Otherwise, I have a million other things I want to ask you, but then
we have less of questions and more of outpours of love.
I'm not surprised.
I don't know if I should be reading it verbatim, but apparently Antje is simply the kindest and most interesting human in the world.
Oh God!
And then it goes on in the same direction.
I hope also that people have appreciated that. You can't see my trousers very well, but hat, we have heard the feedback. We've listened. Color coordination, it's a thing. It's key. Antje, thank you so much for being my pal first and foremost, and like my family here, very much so, and a collaborator and contributor to so many things, and for joining me on the podcast, and for hurtling with me unstoppably, unstably. It's a joy to do most things with you.
Yeah, same.
And to everyone watching at home, thank you so much for tuning in.
Is there no question from the
No, everyone just thinks you're great. Nobody wants to ask you anything. They just want to hear you talk.
Thank you.
If you have any questions for Antje, we will definitely have her back again, especially to talk more about this new product that's in development. Watch the space. There's lots more to come. Do keep up to date with the hafnarhaus app for events that are coming up in the future.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on at the moment. We also have concerts at Mengi again.
Poetry reading
at the shop tonight. It's also all on Facebook if you're not in the house yourself. And yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll be back again next week.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I'm very
That's
nice.
very.
Offering you seeds from next door. From
See?
the seed library that opened today.
There's a seed library?
Oh, did she do it now, Martina?